Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Happy holidays. I'm Nielle.
Coming up for you on today's report, Derek Chauvin is expected to change his plea in his federal case. We'll tell you what that means. Plus, the men convicted of killing Ahmaud Arbery, they're scheduled to be sentenced next month. And a Kentucky task force approves recommendations to limit when search warrants can be served in response to the killing of Breonna Taylor.
Also, a U.S. bank CEO issues an apology to a black customer, and a California All-Star wins this year's Heisman Trophy.
Soulmates, we have that and so much more. You know why? Because it's our voice and it's our truth. So let's get to it.
Hey there, soulmates. Good evening. I hope you're having an okay Tuesday. It's no longer Monday. Let's get to our top story. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. Reports say he appears to be on the verge of pleading guilty to violating George Floyd's civil rights. So this is a move that would remove him from a federal trial, but also could significantly increase the amount of time he'll spend behind bars. A notice sent out Monday by the court's electronic filing system shows a hearing is scheduled for tomorrow for Chauvin to change his current not guilty plea. Now, these types of notices typically indicate a defendant is planning to plead guilty, though nothing will be official until it happens in court. As the AP reports, Chauvin has already been convicted of state murder and manslaughter charges for pinning his knee against George Floyd's neck as the black man said he could not breathe during a May 25th, 2020 arrest. He was sentenced to 22 and a half years in that case. So interesting here, many legal experts had been long saying, including our own legal correspondent, Sue Ann Robinson, that they expected him and the other three officers to take pleas in these federal charges. Also, the other officers, they expect them to take pleas eventually in their state charges. As the New York Times points out, pleading guilty could allow him to serve his sentence in federal prison, which could keep him from crossing paths with inmates in state prison, some of which he may have helped send there. So that's an interesting point there as well. So the suggestion would be that part of the plea would include that specifically. You're going to serve both of these sentences at the same time, and you can serve them in federal court. What's interesting about all of this is that you'll remember reports came out in the middle of the trial that Derek Chauvin had intended and tried to plead guilty to his state charges, with his lawyers hoping for some sort of federal agreement, some sort of paired agreement, essentially, where he would maybe not be charged federally if he took a plea and served state time. At the time, the Attorney General refused to play at all. Remember, William Barr refused to play at all. The report said that, he didn't want anything to do with it. It was in the middle of everything going on and felt like it wasn't good for the Justice Department at that point, wanted to see everything play out in state court. So what I find interesting is that in Merrick Garland's DOJ, he may end up getting what he asked for to begin with.
It's true.
We've been fighting for accountability for police officers, especially on the behalf of our black brothers and sisters, for a very long time. And so I believe that Derek Chauvin's case, he kind of was the guinea pig, honestly, in my honest opinion, in the string of accountability, if I can just, overuse that word here, that we're looking for these police officers. And so, I mean, like you said, Brooke, I do believe that he was going to have to give some to get, you know what I'm trying to say, do a little give and take here in order to, get the result that he was wanting. Because at the end of the day, they are sending him all the way. He got the max here. We were looking for some other people to get similar situations. Like, we're still looking for accountability for Breonna Taylor, and we could talk about that a little bit later. But with Derek Chauvin, they're going all the way with him. And so this is what he had to do in order to try to get a little bit of reprieve in his situation, if there is a reprieve for him.
I just feel like at some point, do we want to hear him show any remorse or say something, right? Because nothing happened at the trial, and a lot of people are upset about that. A lot of people say, well, there's nothing he can possibly say to make people feel any different after what he did on that day in 2020. But the way you broke it down, I love the fact that you're saying, look, it's not like he's really showing remorse. He's pretty much doing this because he wants to avoid a whole different situation. And that's what it is.
Well, I know 3 people who are happy. The other 3 defendants, we had talked a couple of weeks ago about how they didn't want to be tried with him in the civil case. So they got what they want in this. But I don't believe that Derek Chauvin is a guinea pig. I believe that he got exactly what he deserved. But he does stand as a reminder to cops across this entire country that if you do something that is illegal, unjust, and kill a person for no reason, that this could be your answer as well, which is prison probably for the rest of your life. So whether he did it for personal reasons or not, I think this is just it's a good thing that he did this, because in some way or another, this is acknowledgement to his wrongdoings. Now, another story that we covered here from the very beginning on Fox Soul's Black Report is the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, and the 3 men convicted of murder, of killing him last month, will be sentenced in January, according to several news sources. On Monday, a judge set the sentencing hearing for Travis and Greg McBride and William Roddy Bryan for Friday, January 7th in 2022. Now, Travis McMichael was found guilty on all counts, including malice of murder and felony murder. Greg McMichael and William Roddy Bryan were found guilty of felony murder and other charges. And we know these 3 men faced the same thing in federal court. And so as the wheels of justice turn, we've been covering these stories from 2020 of last year, and it's just good to see that the work that advocates and civil rights organizations did, that the awareness and the push to bring these stories to national attention is getting justice, and everybody can see it.
Yeah, everybody can definitely see it. And so, let's just take a second, right? Let's look at what we're talking about. George Floyd, a black man killed in broad daylight in 2020 on the street. And now we're talking about Ahmaud Arbery, who was ran down like the days of slavery. These are things we would hear about growing up that happened back in the days of slavery, but yet they're still happening now. So we want these men to get the max possible. You know, they simply said this man was hauling A down the street after a burglary. This man had nothing on him. Ahmaud Arbery had nothing on him. He was going for a simple jog. He was minding his own business, and they ran him down. So I hope they get the max on that.
Yeah, and in that, you know, at a minimum, they are looking at the possibility of life in prison. That is what the malice and felony murder convictions, that's what they both carry, a minimum penalty of life in prison. What's going to happen at this hearing is the judge is going to be able to decide whether that sentence comes with or without the possibility of parole. And so we're going to see what happens there.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, just to double down on a point I made earlier about Derek Chauvin being the guinea pig, and maybe the guinea pig, I don't know if that's the greatest word, but in my own heart here, you know, again, we've been fighting for this. I feel like in recent years, 1-2 years ago, we were like, okay, why aren't these white men that are killing black people, why aren't police officers that are killing us, why aren't they being convicted? What is happening here? Why are they being able to walk? And so now I feel like we're seeing a string of just accountability. It's a new day and age, and I'm happy that we're able to report that white people who kill black people are going to jail. On to our next story here. The Kentucky Search Warrant Task Force recently met for the final time to finalize recommendations on how Kentucky handles its search warrants. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron formed the search warrant task force in response to the death of Breonna Taylor. The approved recommendations included limiting the hours warrants can be served and the creation of an online portal so individuals can learn their rights when being served. Very important there. So the task force is made up of judges, lawyers, police officers, private citizens, educators, and so many more. Now, after more than an hour and a half of revisions and discussions, including changes to certain wording of the recommendations, a motion was made to approve. The group of 18 individuals unanimously voted to approve those recommendations. The most greatest part here, so that individuals can learn their rights when being served. That was one part that really stuck out to me, because I believe that when we get pulled over, I'm just one person that just knows that I'm just terrified of getting pulled over, just for example. But I don't really know my rights. I don't really know if I'm getting, you know, even like we've talked about new rights that have come along in different states where you can videotape, and then there are certain instances where you can't videotape, where you need to be, where you can't where you can't be. And so that was really awesome about this particular piece here, is that, you know, you can go online and know exactly what your rights are. So if you're ever in a situation, you know exactly how you can flip it, your, Miranda rights and things of that nature if they weren't read. But, what stuck out to me was, there's a lot going on in Kentucky right now with, a tornado and other things. And so, this was okay for Daniel Cameron to do this, but also it would have been so much easier, and it would make so many more people feel so much better if there would have been accountability for Breonna Taylor's killers, or if there would have been some updates. It would have been great for him to make this in her name, but also while doing that, say, and we're also going to push forward and make sure that some more action items are done so we can, make the Black community feel, trust me, So I like that he's trying to make some strides, but also it's like we still have nothing to say about Breonna Taylor. That it's kind of like, it's great, but I don't know.
I know in that conversation right there, you said the word trust, and I just want to flip it for a second because it's all about trust and having that with the police officers, right? Me as a Black man, having my son, I'll tell you about a story on Friday. I went to do a Christmas parade, and when I went there, I was sitting there with my flashes on, waiting to be escorted. But the police did pull up because I was in an area where, it was kind of blocked off, so he was wondering why I was doing that.
You were in the parade?
Yeah, I wasn't in the parade. I was in my car still waiting to get there. And he hit me with the hey, what are you doing here? And I explained, and I even reached for my water bottle. But after he left, I had that moment of wow, my son's in the back. And then I kind of got nervous and upset saying, I'm glad it turned out this way. I had no reason to feel that way. He did nothing wrong. But these stories and what's happening in our country makes me go there sometime. And we shouldn't feel like that, whether it's from a search warrant situation or to just being pulled up on like that, so.
Yeah, and I think that's important to bring up, Romeo, because that is the story of Black people in this country. There is always a fear and hesitation when you interact with law enforcement, and it's a sad reality that we face. But I want to get back to what's happening in Kentucky. We know that last year they banned no-knock warrants, which was why Breonna Taylor was murdered. And so now you have this task force, which is comprised of attorneys, law enforcement, and civil constituents in the city. So you have this group of people that some are elected, some are workers within the city, and then you have the community that came up with this task force to even further the no-knock warrants. So even though we're not a fan of the Attorney General of the state, you do see that there is some movement that is happening when it comes to laws and policies when we look at law enforcement and criminal justice. But to Demi's point, we still want justice for Breonna Taylor's life because it did matter.
Yes, it definitely did. All right, St. Louis Mayor Tashard Jones on Monday signed a bill repealing city ordinances that make it illegal to possess small amounts of marijuana. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch reports that in addition to repealing city ordinances, the bill bars police from enforcing state and federal laws against possession of small amounts of marijuana paraphernalia. With certain exceptions, the smell or presence of marijuana can no longer be the only proper cause for search and arrest. Jones has said the bill removes an unjust and discriminatory policy. She said nearly 600 people have been arrested in St. Louis on marijuana charges in the past 3 years, and nearly 500 of them, believe it or not, were Black. This bill is called, Board Bill 132, and she went on statement for saying, we are seeing a major shift in the way our country sees not just marijuana, but how it connects to public safety, incarceration, economic opportunity in our communities. And she also said this law will help reduce racial disparities in our policing, make our city safer, and make St. Louis more competitive in hiring for city positions. A lot's going on there, and at the end of the day, we know there's been a lot of men of color arrested for something like this and spent so many years behind bars where you have people who've done something worse than this and they're out. So it's an ongoing problem that we're trying to fix, but I see what she's trying to do for the city.
And what's interesting about this is that, look, we've spent many times on this show talking about what a marijuana conviction does to your job prospects, what it does to your future, what it does, what it does to your past, what it does, the type of harms that many experts have said, hey, it causes this, and this. Many lawmakers right now pushing for these changes in their cities and their states are basically saying, hey, before we even get to any of that, we believe it is stupid to put somebody in jail for something that is legal a state over or a state across the country or, or here or there. They feel like, that's just proving that it's just problematic. And so it's interesting to see this happen, and also in a state that maybe has many other lawmakers, right, that don't have those same, any elected officials, that don't have those same feelings.
Right, and representation matters, and I think this is a good example of that. You have a Black woman And as the mayor of a city who's looking at the policies, looking at the criminal records and all of these things and taking into assessment that there is a lack of fairness when it comes to people of color in marijuana, and she's doing something about it. And so this is just an example to elect people that can understand the plight, especially in your community.
Yeah.
Now, this might not apply into another community, but she understands her constituents. She sees the disenfranchisement, and she's doing something about it. So representation matters.
You know, Neo, that's exactly where I was going to go here, is that she knows the people, she knows the community, because she prides herself on being the first mayor in over 20 years to be born, raised, and still live in St. Louis. So if there's anyone, Neo, like you're saying here, that knows the community and knows what the community needs, it would absolutely be her. So there's a new analysis that revealed racial disparities within criminal cases in Cook County, Illinois. More than 3 million criminal cases were filed in Cook County between 2000 and year 2018. Over 60% of those were filed against black people, according to an analysis of Cook County court data by the circuit, even though black people only make up about a quarter of the county's population. People of color have always been disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system, but the analysis shows that black people make up a larger share of defendants charged in criminal court in recent years compared to 20 years ago. So, of course, being from Chicago, born and raised in Chicago, I had to do just a small deep dive on here. And so activists are saying that the priorities have reduced from police focusing on nonviolent cases like low-level drug possession, theft, and prostitution. So now that's kind of not the priority. The priority now is gun cases. Of course, you know, there is so much crime going on in Chicago right now, which when you think about it, it makes sense that maybe there should be more police effort going towards gun cases. But the problem is that when you put more highlight on the gun cases, disproportionately affects our black brothers. Also saying, I won't go into deep dive because I know we don't have a lot of time, but bottom line is, the justice system disproportionately affects black people. And so, there's a lot of crime in Chicago too. So I also am happy that there's more effort going into crime, because it's just really scary, just, knowing that your family is in Chicago and that any minute something tragic could happen. But it sucks at the same time that this will, affect our black communities the most.
We're talking about 3 million cases, 60% are African American men. There's a whole lot of racial profiling going into this. And I know that Chicago is notorious for headlines about having gun problems and gang problems and people dying. But 60% of 3 million cases, that is ridiculous. And, if the state can't do it, then the DOJ needs to jump in and do some serious investigation to this, because this is horrific. And it is another example of what systemic racism looks like in this country.
And that's what, just to one more piece here, and that's what lawmakers are saying, Neil, is that the state is trying to figure it out, but the justice system can't figure out what's going on in Chicago. The root of the problem is what needs to be figured out. Why is this happening? Kind of like what you're going back to, so systemic racism for sure.